Welcome one more day to Vital and Harmonia. Today I'm going to give you very important principles of inner knowledge and understanding. We are going to explore how to be in coherence with our true soul personality, expressing the true will, knowing with true conscience, and fulfilling our vital purpose in this dark world. You're also going to see connections with the principles of harmonia, psychoastrology, psychotypes, and many other branches of knowledge. But we have to understand the basis, because all is vibration and all is governed by principles of harmonia. Remember how in previous videos we have been seeing that we are hijacked by shadows, victimism, sense of guilt, complex of inferiority, complex of superiority, vanity, self-deprecation, self-compassion, self-pity, and all this derives from a false image of ourselves, from thinking too much about what others think about ourselves, and all this give us false images. It's not true what we usually think about others or about ourselves. There are many negative emotions, sensations, false beliefs, false ideas operating through our subconscious and unconscious mind. And therefore, we have become slaves of a fallen world, and we are not perceiving reality as it is. Therefore, we have to find our true, essential personality. And notice that in order to be in tune, we have to be in a center and have all our centers of perception aligned. Because we are not just perceiving reality through the senses, the five senses, but also through the mind, the emotions. And all these are tainting, painting our perception. But we have to be attuned to spiritual senses as well. We not only have psychological and physical senses. We have very important spiritual senses that can align ourselves to something deeper, moving us to a deeper octave of reality. Consider that this 3D world is like psychophysical octave, but we can be here perceiving something deeper. Now, consider that in one octave, one musical octave, there are 7 main notes. The 8th is the repetition of the first. And in these 7 notes, there are also 12 semitones. The last semitone would be the 13th. And we also have 12 aspects that we have to develop, like the 12 fruits of the tree of life. And the 13 would be the completion, our true, complete personality. But there are main 7 steps that can be taken as a reference. In the same way, there are 7 centers of perception as well. But before going into that, consider that taken as a whole, we are body, soul, and spirit, and mind, heart, and body. There are triads, and this can be considered as a chord. In a chord, in a main major chord, you have 3 notes that can have different characters. And we can also have different physical expressions, emotional, heart expressions, mental expressions. And we are attuned when the reconciling side, which are usually the emotions, the heart, is uniting the mind and the body. When there is full attention on what we have to do, energy flows where attention goes. Now, sometimes we find experiences that are difficult to digest or that are painful, we can feel them through negative sensations, negative emotions, negative thoughts. And this can be compared to the so-called devil interval, the triton. But we can consider this as an opportunity to move to another perception, because we can think of a triton as part of a chord. It moves us. There is tension, but it gives us the opportunity to be propelled to a deeper, more balanced experience. In the same way, we can have one experience and perceive it in different ways depending on the mode of awareness, the coherence that we have. Take, for instance, a note. This note can be perceived differently with different chords. But it's the same note. In the same way, we can have one experience that can become richer as we become more and more aware of all the elements coming together. And this is where the 7 centers of perception can come into place. The first center that we can know, because it's the first that we become familiar with, is the moving center. The central nervous system helps us to move, and we can express many things with the body. So we have to become aware of how we use our corporal expression, what postures we adopt, how we speak when we are in a certain posture. It's not the same to be paying attention with the spine straight than to be in a very tense way, because tensions distract us and we cannot perceive reality when we are not fully aligned. So this is a first way of perceiving, becoming aware of our posture, our body in general. But then there are perceptions that come through our organism, the organic center, which runs functions such as digestion, breathing, the blood flow, etc. And notice how many times we are agitated, we are anxious, our breath becomes very shallow, very superficial. And there are other times in which we are not digesting something well, and this makes us feel very heavy. And we might think we are depressed, but it might be because something in the organism is not working well. Now there is a sexual center which is run by an energy, a creative energy, that not only has the function of reproduction, it can be used for creating something else, music, a painting, because it can operate on other centers of perception. However, this general energy is usually abused and misused. Therefore, it generates short circuits, making the person perceive reality in a very distorted way. Irrational sexuality and certain forms of violence and emotionality is a way of misusing that energy. This has to do with emotions as well. There is an emotional center where we can feel basic emotions such as fear, joy, sadness, but there are complex emotions, sentiments, which involve the functioning of the mental center, When there are negative thoughts, negative ideas, false beliefs, these trigger negative emotions. Therefore, what we see, what we think, what we feel, and what we do are all connected. We have to be aware of our vision, our speech, our action, because all this is going to tell if we are aligned in coherence or not with our true being. Now, these 5 centers have to be harmonized by 2 more centers. The first can be regarded as a higher vibration emotional center, in which we experience conscience in a very intuitive way. It's like feeling something in this area in the heart. We feel there is something wrong about what we are doing, about our thoughts, about the way we are perceiving. And it's a very subtle vibration, so we have to listen very attentively and trust. Confidence is a very important aspect of following this higher emotional center. But then there is a higher vibration mental center, where conscience gives us understanding. In the first, we receive wisdom and intuition, but then this unfolds as an understanding. We see from a broader perspective that everything is connected, and this makes us feel integrated into an harmony. Even if there is darkness or there is pain or suffering, we can digest what is taking place because we understand. And these 2 centers of perception are always present. They are here. They are not in somewhere up above. They are ever present because they are part of the true light of our being, which is constantly coming to us. We just have to listen and follow the threads so that we can have a more conscious relation with this deeper side of ourselves. Actually, these 2 centers take us to the higher vibration octave, which is the connection with the universal will. That's our true being, the intelligence that is connected to what we have to do and knows what is our true vital purpose. We come here with an essential aim, and if there is someone who knows what we have to do, is our true master, which is originated by the primordial source. So our master is the center of will, but is on a deeper octave. And we have to be vibrating in tune with that higher octave, mirroring what is invisible on this visible universe. But when we are living from our true will conscience, we are not trapped in the 3D world. So we are living from a deeper octave in reality. Now, in order to understand all this in a more dynamic way, we can make use of the ancient image of the inner mansion. The psychophysical complex and the spiritual dimension was usually compared to a mansion owned by a master and inhabited by different servants. There was also a steward and a delegate steward. We can also place a lady of the keys who is in charge of opening the rooms and the door. And one version of this image is a parable told by Master Ishu, when he said that there was a woman who had 10 coins, she lost one. She turned on a light and cleansed the house in order to find the lost coin. This is an allegory of how we have to turn on the lights of consciousness and clean up the house, because the house can only be inhabited by the master when it is in order and harmonia. Now, we have to understand the functions. The servants are our moving center, organic center, sexual center, the emotional center, mental center. But there is a delegate, a steward, which receives the orders from conscience, which is the steward, and the lady of the keys, which is the intuition. So the delegate steward can be considered as the personality that somehow is starting to mirror the true personality, but is not yet a full manifestation of our true personality. Is, let's say, the person in ourselves which is willing to help, to serve, and can see which thoughts, emotions, and tasks, physical movements, can be helpful, and is obedient. So the delegate steward receives orders from the steward, which is the mental higher vibration center, which understands what has to be done. And then the lady of the house helps us receive the intuitive conscience that opens up the heart with compassion, love, care. So this is the connection with something that must inhabit, must be expressed through our personality, the true master, which can arrive, obviously, when the house is fully clean and everyone is working in harmonia, without missing any task. Otherwise, the house can become a mess, and there are many traitors. There are many servants who don't want to work for the master, and they work for the adversary. So many false personalities in us are completely self-destructive. Therefore, in order to be in coherence with our true being, we have to be listening to our conscience intuitively, so understanding with the steward, and manifesting our true harmonious delegate, steward personality, which never does anything strange. It doesn't play stupid roles. It doesn't imitate others. Because we fall from our true personality when we imitate others, or try to make fun in ways which does not correspond to us, things like that. Then we have to be in coherence with what we do in life. And there are 7 main areas: economy, health, interpersonal relationships, free time, masteries, and work. So we have to understand certain keys about these 7 areas. For instance, on the economy, we must have an appropriate attitude towards money. Money is related to how energy moves in our society. Money is not bad in itself, it's just an expression of how things work. And obviously, it's not an intelligent system, but we cannot have a negative attitude. So we don't have to regard money as the source of evil, as some say. The true phrase was the philargyria, the selling and buying selfishly. That's the root of evil. But when we manage our economy properly, then it helps us live in this world. But many people have huge amount of money and they squander it, so they don't know how to use money. Others have little money, they don't understand how it works, they value it little, and therefore they squander money as well. So it comes a point when they complain about not having money. But the problem is not the lack of money, but the misuse of money. Some people demand a lot and then they squander money in trivial things when they could be using that money for receiving something more important or supporting others. That's very common in our society. People demand help and then they complain about anything and everything without putting their energy and money in what is worth. Now, there is also an aspect of health. Obviously, if someone doesn't know how to handle the economy, is not going to value health. Now, then we have the area of interpersonal relationships. There are family, friends, acquaintances, and we cannot relate with them in the same way. So there have to be a wise attitude. And also consider that we cannot be alone. We need each other. We need help. Therefore, we have to take care of this area as well. The area of health is very important. What we eat, how we eat, where we eat is important, but also the health of the mind and the heart in a spiritual, psychological way. All this is wholeness. Health comes from wholeness. Then we have the area of free time or time to enjoy. Because sometimes we just have to let go and focus on something that can cleanse and fill our heart. But obviously, if we are wasting the time when we have the so-called free time, then that's an area which is left unattended. And we can use free time to build up something that is going to help us work in something that might give us more free time. So we have to consider all these as well to be in coherence. Then there is the area of masteries that we acquire. What kind of abilities we brought when we came to this planet. We have inborn talents, but we have to cultivate them. And for that, we also need inner understanding, inner knowledge. That's another area. If we don't understand how the world works and how our personality works, we cannot cultivate anything. So both are related, masteries and inner knowledge. But all this has to be oriented towards the fulfillment of our true vital purpose, and therefore this covers the area of work. What are we working for in this world? Some people work in something that maybe is not related to their interest, but that gives them money to have free time, and that's okay. But this doesn't work with most of us. It depends on the psychotype, but many of us have to be working in something that is fully in tune with our true essence in order to feel fulfilled on all levels. So we have to understand how the psychotypes work. And there are four main psychotypes, and there are four main elements: the earth, the water, the air, and fire, which represent four types of people or persons, even though each one is divided in three, for body, heart, and mind. Now let's realize that there are people who are more physical, they perceive reality in a more sensory way. So don't approach them with theories, ideas, ideals. They have to be more in tune with what they touch, they see. And therefore, if we belong to that psychotype, we also have to relate with ourselves that way, but we have to expand the other areas as well to cultivate the mind, the emotions, and our will. Now, there are people who is more emotional. Emotions are connected to the element of water. And these people relate to what they feel, to the experiences, the connections with others. So it's easier to reach their heart by means of experiences, memories. But obviously they have to work in the other areas as well, and the same goes for each one of us. Then there are people represented by the element of air. They are more mental, so they find very easy to talk, to hold a conversation, and they like to read books and to be knowledgeable about many things, even if it's just a superficial knowledge. It depends on the person, but they don't like to be in touch with emotions sometimes. And they might be too intellectual, they don't accomplish things on a physical level. So those areas have to be balanced as well. The emotions and the fulfillment in life. Now, there are also psychotypes represented by the element of fire. And in this case, the people have a tendency to fulfill goals, they have strong wishes, they are very persistent, and they accomplish many things on a material level or intellectual level. But all this has to be balanced because this can be an obsession, the impulse to achieve anything they want. Now, as you probably notice, all this is connected to astrology, not sidereal astrology, which has to do with the influence of constellations, stars, and planets. The influence is the one we receive from the Earth, the Sun, the Moon, the magnetism of the Moon. So it's tropical astrology, psychoastrology. The stars are just a reference, and there are 12 main psychotypes, but the center is the 13th psychotype, which gathers them all. I will be exploring this subject deeper during the following session, but just to give you a clue. Usually people think they are of a sign, but this not always coincides with the true psychotype. Because what influences us on a psychobiological level is the magnetism of the moon. So we have to check the moon calendar. The Hebrew calendar follows the 13 moons. Sometimes the solar sign coincides with the moon sign. My moon sign is Aquarius. So this means that I'm governed by the principle of air. So I'm a very mental type of sign, but its sign is either more physical or more emotional or more mental. And Aquarius is the most physical sign. It's run by Saturnian energy. So this means that even though I am a mental type, my inclination is to express something very creatively through the body. That's my harmonious behavior. I'm also a composer, a musician, so I find it very helpful to use music in order to balance my mind and my body. Because Aquarius doesn't like to feel the body very much. We feel more comfortable in the world of imagination. But living in the clouds can be a problem because we have to come back to the earth and we have to digest all the experiences here. Aquarius is run by the impulse I know. We tend to feel we know a lot, but we understand very little, very often. So we have to expand this area, make connections. We cannot understand if we don't make contact with emotions and the world. So the shadow of Aquarius, of this sign, is to live in the head. But there are other signs that are also mental, even though they are run by a more emotional aspect. For instance, Libra is more emotional, even though it's an air sign. And Gemini is more intellectual, because it's an air sign run by Mercury. And for now, I think it's enough information to ponder. I will leave a link to a video on the 13 psychotypes in the other channel, in Harmony. Down below you have the information. And for now, let's remember that we have to be in coherence with the voice of conscience, expanding the understanding to be connected to the will of our true master self, which comes from the primordial source, the primordial father of lights, as it was known in ancient times. And this is the only way to harmonize our 7 centers of perception, to express them on the 7 areas of life, fulfilling our true vital purpose. And the following day will be exploring more keys to know ourselves with the principles of the cosmos, the elements, the vibrations. Therefore, let's keep opening ourselves to the supraconditional love and modified life, integral conscience, and deep, blissful serenity.